Hey folks, in this episode of the Light Artists Podcast, you get to sit down with Moal. He is a UK-based photographer and musician. We're going to be talking all about photography, music, and NFTs. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today I have the honor of having Moal on the show. Like I said there in that intro, he's a UK-based photographer, he's a musician, and if you're watching this, you may have seen his name around in NFT circles as well. We're going to dive into all of that in this particular interview. Moal, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
Hello, mate. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure having you on, man. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Let's start the conversation with just a little bit of background on who you are. Like I was saying before we started recording, your background seems unique, and I don't say that lightly. It seems very unique amongst artists. And one of the things I read in your bio that you sent over was part of your motivation is, or your source of creativity, as it were, is music versus other photographers or other sources. You draw your inspiration from music. Tell us how Moal got started in all this creation business.
Yeah, sure. So pretty much it all stems from music. That kind of is like my history. Like from a kid, I used to trade bootleg CDs, like when the internet just started. That was like I was just obsessed with music and playing guitar. Yeah. And then as I grew up, like adulthood took over, so I was working in like corporate jobs and things and continuing to make music on the side. But fast forward like to the photography days, it's like 10 years on, and I started photography during lockdown. So it's a case of I was just figuring stuff out from YouTube tutorials. I couldn't go out. There was no outside influence. It was literally just me making stuff up. So creatively, like I hadn't got any experience in photography per se, but I've had a massive creative outlet in music, and the musicians I love, like Björk and Sigur Rós and Jeff Buckley and all these people, like there's a huge visual element to them, especially Björk. So I've been had like secondary inspiration almost from them. Like I didn't know this, but Björk has worked with Tim Walker and Nick Knight, and I only know this now because I looked at her visual work and things like that. So I have technically been inspired by some like small group of photographers, but it's just been through her work and her collaborators. So in terms of a pool of creativity, that kind of what I realized is you don't start creativity from zero when you move to a different medium. You picked it up in a different way. So in terms of how I learned photography, it was just, here's how to press the buttons. Here's how to like control the light. And I was like, okay, sweet. After 2 weeks, I got that. And then all the ideas were there ready. Like that's been like a well of creativity that's been flowing for like years, if not decades. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There's so much to unpack there, because on the one hand, just to kind of rewind a little bit for the folks that may have seen your NFT drops and seen your work in general, it's exciting and it's depressing for other photographers when you say that, I picked up a camera during lockdown and now you're creating this level of work. so what was it just sort of a natural evolution for you, or were there specific sort of analogs between music and music creation and photography? Was it a natural AB chocolate peanut butter kind of thing, or was it a stretch for you?
In terms of the creativity side, the process is exactly the same to me. The difficulty at the beginning was just learning what these buttons do, like how I get it to be blurry in the background, how I get it to stop being bright white and everything blown out, like just really basic things. So the YouTube tutorials I found were like, there was these three like quite nerdy kids who had zero creativity, who were just telling you like, press these buttons, this does this. It's basically like the exposure triangle. I learned that in like a couple of weeks. And then the rest is pretty easy. And a big point I would add to that is because I could only shoot in like my tiny flat in London, and I just had like some 50 quid Amazon lights and like a little RGB light, which just means like red, green, blue, so you can have a color on it. Everything is quite portrait focused, and that's purely out of when you have limitations, like it breeds creativity, in my opinion. And I had so many limitations of one, the space, but two, I couldn't go out. It was really hard to get models. Like I had to basically like scout Instagram for like local area people. Be like, do you want to shoot? I'll wear a mask sort of thing when the rules were a bit more lenient. So it was all really difficult in one sense, but then it gave me, because my actual pictures were not that technically great, I had to spend a lot of time on editing. So the editing is what kind of pushed it to give me more of a unique style, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. And I would say you're kind of a mix of creatives right now. So you're on the visual side and the oral or the audio side of things. Do you find that one is heavier than the other, or is it, photography is the shiny new object and you're excited to start incorporating, things from the music side into your photography? Or is it photography is a small part, but your main planet is always going to be music? How do you position these things weight wise in your creative world?
Kind of both. And what I mean by that is financially in the NFT world, I focus more on photography because it's a very visual medium. The NFT music scene is tiny and just not even at infancy. It's so small. And the music side, for me now, it's like the last project we can talk about later gave me like an in to be like, how can I combine the two? How can I use NFTs like properly? Like all those kind of things. So that felt like the most whole, complete, satisfying work I've done, probably ever, even outside of NFTs. But in terms of the medium that I'm moving forward with, it's still photography focused in NFTs until the music side kind of picks up a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Aside from music being an inspiration for the work that you're doing, and we'll, like you said, we'll talk about that drop in a second. But aside from music being sort of a catalyst or an inspiration for the work, have you considered bringing them together? Right. And I think we talked about this in one of those Twitter spaces where you've got a motion kind of component, music component, and then the static photo component all together into one piece? Or do you feel like, it's better to sort of keep a little bit of air gap between them? What's your philosophy on that?
I don't have one. Like I honestly just make it up as I go along. And I feel like most artists do, but they backward rationalize it and make up these artsy fartsy descriptions of their inspiration and stuff. Honestly, mate, like my mind's open to anything. Like any idea that pops in, I'm doing it. I don't really second guess my like inspiration. It's just the subconscious, and I just listen to it. Like I think it's, what was it? Aboriginal folklore says like we have 3 brains, and our smallest is our human brain, our second biggest is like our heart, and our biggest is our gut. And that so resonated with me because all my decisions come from my gut. Like if it feels right in my gut, I'm like, down, I'm doing it. I don't sit there and analyze, okay, why do I feel that way? Where has this come from? I couldn't care less. Like it feels right, I do it. So the NFT space has been kind of hard for me because you've got to explain everything. You got to give a story behind everything. Like it's like, there's X Factor shows when before they sing, they tell them about their second auntie's cousin got cancer in the 60s or whatever, and it's really tearful, and then they bash out some Roy Orbison and everyone cheers. It's like that feeling. I'm like, it just makes me cringe a bit. Like, can't the art just be the art? Like, why do I have to tell you a life story behind it? So yeah, I just make it up, mate. That's the truth behind it.
That is refreshing, right? Because you hit it right on the head. It's just I make it up as I go along. I don't have any sort of constraints around that. That's brilliant. So let's shift gears and talk about the NFT space a little bit, right? So you've got this. I want to talk about the latest drop. Before we talk about the latest drop, I want to kind of get your thoughts on the overall NFT space as it stands today. As we're recording this, it's the end of August, beginning of September of 2022. So where are your, are you excited still? Are you bullish on the space? Like, how do you feel about the world of NFTs as it relates to creatives right now?
Hmm. If I'm being honest, like I'd say a third of it is amazing and still really inspires me. And I think there's so much positive growth there. And two-thirds of it is just a giant load of bollock where it's just gatekeeping, it's who you know. There's way too few collectors. The ratio is just so abysmally skewed that everyone is going to not succeed, basically, statistically. So it's kind of a balancing act. Like so much of the work in NFTs is just admin, marketing, sitting in spaces, trying to connect with people, and a lot of sort of faux relationships of I need you to get to my next step. And I can't do that. Like it's just not in my DNA. Like I'm quite straight talking, I'm quite to the point. Can't be sitting in a Twitter space for like 2 hours listening to someone talk about their project with potatoes or different color hats or whatever the next thing is. I don't care. But saying that, the one third that is amazing, it's just like an incredible medium. Like it gives creatives some power back. Like it sets a great precedent in a lot of ways. And I'm only just exploring it now, but things like the world of art in Tezos, like that seems to be still doing it the right way in general. Like everything's going to have stumbling blocks, but they still seem to be doing it in the correct way. And that's largely down to price. Like it's such a low price community. It allows people to trade and buy and talk
Yeah.
about the art and just be really into it. So that bit is really great. It gives artists, especially like me, like a multi-medium artist, an opportunity to combine things and do unique things that I wouldn't be able to do in a quote unquote Web 2 world.
Hmm.
So yeah, the swings around, and like I've met some really amazing people. Like I talk about spaces, being some spaces where it's just chatting with really interesting, creative people who I respect and admire. And that's amazing. Like that's really good, but they're just way too far in between like the bad stuff. Like the balance is not quite right. So about a third, yeah, is spot on. Two-thirds is just not my vibe at all.
Yeah, hanging out in the NFT space, whether it's a space or on Discord or wherever, is there a direct sort of analog to that in the music world? Like, where do musicians coalesce and hang out? And is the same kind of community that we see in NFTs present on the music side of your circles?
Not really, no. I think that's why the NFT space is great because it's way ahead of that. Like
Yeah.
musicians are basically been in like a mental lockdown for about 20, 30 years. Like we're used to just staying indoors, working on stuff for God knows when, trying to figure out some like why this Ableton plugin's not working, like really techie boring stuff. Like the community is there, like amongst friends and things like that, and like people you see playing gigs and whatnot, but it's not as accessible. The NFT space is like Twitter and Discord, they're just always awake and alive, and there's just always people there to chat with, and they're always like showcasing their work or their behind the scenes or whatever. So you see their story all the time. And I don't think it's just the music scene, just general real life is not like that. Like people have jobs and normal things to do. That's why I wonder about the NFT space. I'm like, how are these people sitting on their computer for like 14 hours a day just doing this? Like, I want to know the secret. Like, clearly there's some magic fund that they're working from. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I wish people would speak more about money in this space because I just don't get it. Like, I've come from a finance background and I still don't get how these people are like selling next to nothing and living good lives on no jobs. Like, I find it mad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess there's a bit of magic in it right now, and the part of what you're talking about is that there's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's the excitement of where things could go and how is that person successful. I have no idea. I got to figure out how they did it so I can do it too. But then the other side of that blade is like just what you said. Like, how the heck are you able to sit on a space for 3 hours in the middle of the day, you know, and still survive? Do you have a job, or is the whole space populated by, you know, rich people or retirees or something? Right? Yeah. So, you know, I wanted to talk a little bit more about just the music side as applied to NFTs. Like, do you? And you're the perfect person to ask this because you're straddling both worlds right now. But when you look at music or songs that you produce, do you ever, now that you kind of understand how NFTs work, do you ever think, hey, I'm just going to make a solid NFT out of this, you know, just this album or this series of songs or whatever, no visual component. I'm just going to make NFT audio NFTs. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, it's not there yet. Space isn't there yet. Like, it really needs visuals to even capture people's attention, to even listen to it. Like, the market is just so tiny, even of musicians. Like, we're talking less than 1,000 musicians probably in the, in the music NFT space. So think how many collectors are in there. Like, it's just tiny. And like, I've only like done one full album, and it took me years to record and mix and produce and master and all that stuff. I don't want to just waste that on releasing it to nobody, basically. It will come. Like, I think once the big players come in, as much as people will hate that because the traditional world is trying to take over Web3, it brings in new eyes and it brings in audiences. And I kind of welcome it to some extent, because the two worlds will collide and there'll be some discussion and some positive things might happen. I think having this divide of, you know, we're Web3, we're the future, we don't want you involved in any sort of medium, is so stupid and backwards. Like, debates, like, have a conversation, like, see what you agree and disagree with, what you can take forward. Each party will have good ideas. But yeah, in terms of music, it's nowhere near that for me to actually just release an album with nothing else on it.
Yeah. What do you think? Are we a year out, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years before?
It's hard to say, because obviously it's so dependent on the crypto market as well, because as soon as that crashes, people just leave as well. So that's like another factor you've got to put in there. Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, ultimately, like, you can make anything work. Like, I could figure it out and try and make it work and potentially have a successful album. People have done it, so I don't want to put anyone off, because it's clearly possible. The difference actually is, a lot of the time, you're the trailblazer. You're the first person to do it. You have an idea, you research, like, oh, who's done this before? What can I learn from them? And you realize that, oh, no one. Like, I'm basically doing it the first time. That's an amazing feeling. Like, that's super inspiring for me to be like, okay, sweet. I might do something so new and like take things in a new direction, or it might go tits up and no one's interested. Like, you just don't know. But that bit is exciting.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, we've all heard the phrase when people say, "Yeah, I stood on the shoulders of giants to reach this new level," right? And, you know, based on what you're saying, what if you're the giant, right? You're the giant that they're standing on the shoulders of to reach the next thing. That's an interesting concept. Mo, I want to switch gears and talk about this latest drop you did, A Long Time, and how that came to fruition. What is it all about, and what drove you to create the piece? And you know, we'll of course link to it in the blog post for this episode, and show some visuals as well. But give us a behind the scenes look at A Long Time.
Yeah, I just fucking love it, mate. It's the best thing I've done, and I just can't begin to explain the work that went into this. Like, probably close to 600 hours of work to get this done. And it started off as, I saw this video on YouTube of some guy like doing the technique. You'll see it in the pictures of, like, it's called light painting, where you basically shoot in pitch black and long exposure, and then you've got time to carve the light in however you want. And it wasn't that great, but the idea was there. I was like, okay, this is interesting. It's speaking to me. I'm very obsessed with like space and galaxies and psychedelics and other worlds and all that. And this is like, to me, like a portal to that. Like, I was like, this is my thing. Like, especially in the world of photography, I'm always trying to do something different. I don't want to be like anyone else. And that was like the thing. And then on top of that, I wanted to do some music. I wanted to showcase that actually I'm a musician. I've just been like started to take photographs. I don't really know what I'm doing, but music, I know what I'm doing. And I want it to be like something substantial. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write like 45-minute song and chop it up into 100 pieces. And then each image is going to have 1/100th of that song. And it's going to be like a gated token. So you can download the full song if you've got it, so you can hear the whole piece. That was the idea. Yeah. And in classical music, like songs are like 40, 50, 60 minutes. So that was like my basis of like, okay, this would be pretty easy. So like I'm a massive fan of, there's a song by Henrik Gorecki called Symphony No. 3, and it's in 3 parts. It's like 43 minutes or something. I was like, okay, easy. I'll just copy that structurally. It'll be like super simple. So I wrote that bit, and that was like 7 minutes. And I was like, oh, shite. Like, I've got a lot of work to do here. So then I just sat down and I was like, okay, if I want to express myself fully as a musician, I'm going to write like sections that represent my influences. So it starts on that Henrik Gorecki, huge orchestral sounds, like it's kind of like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back thing. So you're constantly going up the hill gradually, and then it ends in this crescendo. And then it moves into this like dark, moody Nick Cave style, very like just like bass, drums, proper rock and roll kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And then there's like really long guitar section, which was really great for me because like I was writing in long form. I didn't have to restrict things to fit into like a 4-minute song. So I was really exploring my guitar because that's my main instrument. And then just, yeah, like using a lot of ideas that I got, say, from like Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, Matt Bellamy from Muse, like just playing a lot with like whammy bars and things like that. Some Hendrix influence as well in there. And then that goes on for a little bit. And then I was like, I want to do a flute section because Björk did like a flute based album a couple of albums ago, last album. So I did like a whole flute section and then orchestrated that a little bit. And then it goes into this brass instrumental bit because I love like brass sections of orchestras. And then it moves into this kind of like polyphonic guitar section, like inspired by Steve Reich, who's like my favorite composer. And he just makes like looping patterns that loop in different times, basically. So there's like 5 guitar parts, but they're all in different times. So let's say one goes in like 8 beats and one's in 5. When that 5 repeats, it's at a different part of the 8. So if your ears try and focus on one, it's really hard to follow. Mm-hmm. So for me anyway, it makes me hyper focus because I'm like, okay, I'm trying to understand where that's hitting next and that's hitting next. And then like there's lots of like drums and crescendos and bit, and that part goes on. And then it goes into this like singer-songwritery bit, acoustic guitar, drums, basic string arrangements. And that's where I really sing a lot about what the song is about. Like, it's kind of hard to talk about. It's quite personal, but like a long time, it's quite a deep meaning in the lyrics. And if you do buy it, you get like a lyric sheet, so you actually see what I'm talking about. And then that kind of goes on into this big euphoric Sigur Rós like section, and then finishes. I always knew I wanted to finish on a pure string section, and it just finishes in this really calm, beautiful, like string section a bit. And yeah, like, even when I listen to it now, like 43 minutes of music is insane. Like I just don't even know how I did it, but I bloody did it. And I cannot be proud of myself and nailing that. Like I get emotional just thinking about it because it's a real huge part of me that went into that. And for it to be like on a blockchain permanently, like it just feels so perfect. Like so perfect.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing that you thought it through like that, because the way you describe it, it sounds like obviously it's a work of art, but it feels more like an experience. You know, it's almost like a movie, kind of like an audio visual kind of movie that takes you in, and with ups and downs and emotional journeys and all that. But the way you've delivered it by chunking it up into 100 pieces, you know, brilliant, right? Because you get one of those, and of course you want to hear the whole thing after that, right? You can't. It's like eating one potato chip, right? You gotta have you gotta have the whole bag after that. Did you, when you were thinking of the whole idea of taking a long form piece and chunking it up, Did you ever think of maybe a shorter form piece down the line, but instead of going linearly and chunking it up, going vertically and releasing versions of that song, but tracks of it, versus the whole thing? Do you ever think about that? So, you could just get the vocals, or you could just get the drums, or you could just get the guitar, or whatever. But if you buy them all together, they kind of layer together. Had you ever thought about, I don't even know if that's possible in NFT technology, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, possible. Radiohead did a competition like on the In Rainbows album where they did like remix competitions. Lots of people do it. Where like one idea I had was to release the stems. The stems is like the individual tracks, and then to do like remix competitions where you can basically remix it and then sell your remix as an NFT with a royalty that I would get from that. But I've not ventured down that. I needed a bloody break, mate, after this project, so maybe in the future.
That's what I was gonna ask. Like, what's in the future? What's next? Like, is now that you've created this one and it's self-contained, it's out in the wild, and as you say, it's etched permanently into the blockchain. What's the next Moal piece to be released? Has it started coalescing in your brain at all, or or are you done with it and you just haven't released it yet? Where are we?
Well, this the long time project. Like, funny you said that it's like an experience, like a movie, because it had a real life gallery opening in London where it basically was screened, so everyone sat in silence. Like, I'm shocked, but they sat in silence and they watched the film, like scrolling, all the moving images going across, and the full song played. And you'll see it on my Twitter pin post. If this goes out this week, it'll probably still be there. A little kind of trailer of the night. But yeah, that was like one of my ultimate visions at the beginning, was for people to experience it in real life. And it bloody happened. Like, all these things are just happening, like through a lot of work and a lot of graft and a lot of pushing to like make these things happen, but like it happened. So that felt like a really nice full stop on that project. There's still a few things I want to do with it in terms of trying to get out there in different in real life experiences. But yeah, now I'm doing a project about men's mental health, which is going to be pretty much photography based. I'm still working out the numbers of how many pieces I'm going to do, but it's going to be all photos. I'm going to make one video, which is going to be like a very short song. It's a 2.5 minute song I wrote, and the project's called Sometimes I Feel Sad. And the video, like, I wrote this, it was inspired a lot by like old Disney intros. There's like really lush orchestral Disney sounds. So the song has like 14 violin parts recorded on top. And it's just like a really beautiful Hollywood style, Disney style song that's going to go with this specific video about all the pieces. So I'm excited. Like, a lot of people I've spoken to like really resonate with what I'm doing, and it's something that's affected me for like decades. So I'm super excited to get that done, and I started working on it yesterday, so it's all very fresh.
I love that. I love the direction you're going in. The I don't know if you realize this, but by having released, the long time piece and innovated on creating an NFT series that's chunked up from 100 bits and, experimenting with painting with light and all that, you are effectively an expert and a leader in the industry now, right? So even though you just started, I'm curious, how does that make you feel to kind of, have people looking at your work now, even though you just started like around pandemic time, lockdown time, but now looking to you as the expert, and can you give me some advice on how to do mine and all that stuff? Does that make you uncomfortable, or does it make you proud?
Yeah, no, it makes me uncomfortable, I think, because I still feel like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I don't think that's just me. I think everyone feels that, because the space is so like in its infancy and it's constantly changing. And unless I'm like a Beeple or something who's selling millions of dollars worth of NFTs, I don't feel like I'm in a position to. I mean, from the outside, it might be like, obviously you are because you've done X and Y. But as me, like, I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Like I said, I'm just making it up, mate. Like, I don't know the rule book of this.
Everyone is, right? We're just making it up as we go along. And it's more of the repetition that breeds, I don't know, professionalism or repeatability or any of those things. With back to you starting this project or the long time project during lockdown, what was your process for understanding how it all goes? Because that's a complex project, even taking all the music and the learning photography and all that stuff out of it and just looking at the deploying the NFT side of things, the technology and understanding that. What was your process for learning that? Was it just trial and error, YouTube videos? Did you have a friend that was helping you? How did you ramp up to get that part of it flawless?
It was like the timeline's a bit. So I got into NFTs in November last year. And then I minted some stuff, but a long time project, I didn't start that till February this year. So that was like 2.5 months from February. So I already knew what I was doing by then in terms of the technical side. But going back to November when I did like my Genesis collection, that's called Aliens Part 1. And that was like a black and white photo series. And that was, a friend of my girlfriend was in the space. And I tried to get into it like 9 months before, and I just didn't have a clue what was going on. Like, I just thought it was like a money grabbing scam, and anything I clicked, I would lose all my money. I was like, forget it, it's not worth it. At that time, I had someone to be like, what do I do? Like, what is this wallet stuff? What is a MetaMask? Like, how am I meant to do this? So I was constantly asking them questions, and they were like very patient and like giving me answers. But ultimately, like, everything I've ever learned is just been from YouTube tutorials and from reading articles, creativity, like practical stuff, pretty much everything since adulthood has been from that. But it's kind of the same thing. Like, I just kept watching videos, doing things step by step. And once that was minted, and I minted it on Polygon because I was like, I've got no idea what to do on ETH. It's going to cost. So I don't know if I've got that money. I don't know how to get the ETH to this wallet, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that was a really good learning curve to get it done and know that I wasn't going to lose my savings if I clicked the wrong button. And then since then, it was a quite simple evolution to then mint on ETH, learn about Twitter and marketing and all that stuff. And then by that time, that was when I was like, I want to do some bloody music. Like, I want to do something meaty and chunky and I can get my teeth into. So that's when I came up with the long time project. That was like February-ish time.
Wow. And here we are. This is great. I'd encourage anybody that's watching this, everyone that's watching this, definitely check out the drop and check out Moal. Moal, where should people go to check out that piece, the long time piece, and anything else that you're working on? What's a good home base for you?
Probably my link tree, which has got links to everything on there. So that's linktr.ee/moal.nft. And then it's on there as well, but my website is moalphotography.com, and that's got links to everything. And on the website, there's like a whole page about the long time projects and explaining the process, like the details behind it, like, what you get if you bought it, and links to the OpenSea. Like, the whole collection is on OpenSea now to buy it, so you can actually see all the ones you want. So
beautiful. Good. All right, Moal, thank you. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you, taking the time to give us a glimpse behind the scenes of how all this stuff works. When we talked, I think it was a Twitter space when you and I first talked a while ago. And I was blown away just at the quality of the work. And then when you revealed, I just started this photography stuff a few minutes ago, I was like, that's amazing. So congratulations. And it shouldn't be undersold that it takes a certain kind of person and a certain level of talent to be able to do all that stuff, right? It's not like anybody can just say, okay, Moal did it, I'm gonna make a song too, and put some art on top of it and chunk it up. A lot of work went into it, but the work was pushed with talent behind it. So people shouldn't take for granted that it was a process that's not easily repeatable, I'd say, right?
I appreciate that, man. I can't comment on that, but I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Mo, we'll leave it right there. Good luck with everything. Let's definitely stay in touch for this next release. And I'll definitely see you on Discord and on Twitter.
Much love, mate. Thanks so much. Take care.
All right. Take care, Mo.